Pick up two ordinary-looking rocks. One might produce an edge sharp enough to transform your chances of survival. The other might shatter uselessly after the first strike, and more than 2 million years ago, your ancestors somehow learned to tell the difference. There were no geology books, hardness charts, or labels saying tool stone. There was only a landscape filled with millions of rocks and a problem that could not be solved by choosing randomly. A poor stone might crumble, split in the wrong direction, or hide a fracture that ruined hours of work. A good one could become a cutter, scraper, hammer, or durable core from which many sharp flakes could be removed. So what did an ancient toolmaker notice when looking at the ground? Color, shape, weight, sound, or did the real test only begin when stone struck stone? The honest answer is that archaeology cannot show you the exact thoughts inside an ancient mind, but it can reveal the choices those minds repeatedly made. When researchers compare the rocks available in a landscape with the rocks actually carried into ancient sites, a pattern appears. Early humans were often selective, sometimes extremely selective. To understand why, you first need to forget the idea that every rock breaks in basically the same way. Some stones are coarse and full of weak boundaries between large mineral grains. Hit them and the force may scatter unpredictably. Others are fine-grained and more uniform. The energy from a strike can travel through them in a smooth, curved fracture, peeling away a thin flake with an edge far sharper than the original surface. Archaeologists call this conchoidal fracture. Conchoidal simply means shell-shaped, because the broken surface often curves like the inside of a shell. Flint, chert, and obsidian are famous for it. But ancient toolmakers also used quartzite, quartz, basalt, rhyolite, and many other materials. What mattered depended on the job and on what the local landscape offered. A glassy stone might produce an exceptionally sharp edge, yet be brittle. A tougher stone might be harder to shape, but survive repeated impacts. A rounded cobble could fit comfortably in the hand as a hammer. A larger block might contain enough usable material to produce many flakes. Even two stones of the same general type could behave differently because one contained hidden cracks, impurities, or weather damage. This means the question was never simply, is this flint? It was closer to, what can this particular piece become? That judgment may be almost unimaginably old. At Nyayanga in Kenya, archaeologists found Oldowan stone tools dating back close to 3 million years. Oldowan technology includes deliberately struck flakes and the battered cores from which they were removed. The identity of the toolmakers remains uncertain. They may have belonged to early Homo, another hominin such as Paranthropus, or more than one group. But whoever they were not merely grabbing the nearest stones. Researchers chemically matched many Nyayanga artifacts to rock sources across the surrounding landscape. By at least 2.6 million years ago, toolmakers were selectively transporting useful material over distances greater than 10 kilometers. That is a long way to carry dead weight when every journey must be made on foot. Why do that when rocks were available closer to the site? Because a rock and a reliable tool material were not the same resource. Moving selected stone suggests knowledge of where better material could be found, memory of its properties, and some expectation that it would be useful later. The person carrying it was solving a future problem before reaching the place where that problem would occur. Other sites reveal the same basic intelligence in different forms. At Kanjera South, also in Kenya, researchers compared locally available stone with the material early toolmakers selected. Their choices were not explained only by which stone fractured most easily. Durability also mattered. A stone that was slightly more difficult to work could still be valuable if the resulting edge remained useful longer. Imagine learning this without a written explanation. You strike one cobble and it collapses along a hidden weakness. You strike another and a clean flake jumps away. You use that edge and discover whether it stays sharp or quickly crushes. Every attempt produces information. Every failure changes what you notice next time. If you had to choose using only your senses, what would you inspect first? The stone's weight, surface, grain, or sound? Tell me in the comments before you learn what the evidence can and cannot reveal. Modern stone knappers often inspect a rock's shape, visible cracks, grain size, and outer weathered surface. They may feel its weight and consider the angle where a strike could begin a fracture. Sometimes a test strike exposes the fresh material inside. But this does not prove that every ancient culture followed one universal checklist. Toolmaking traditions varied enormously, and the exact sensory tests used in deep prehistory rarely survive. What does survive is consistency. If people repeatedly ignored abundant stone and selected another type, carried it farther, or matched particular materials to particular tools, randomness becomes a weak explanation. Their decisions left a pattern in the ground. A study of Paleolithic sites in the Jebel Qalkha region of southern Jordan makes this especially clear. Researchers examined different kinds of chert and measured properties such as hardness, grain size, and the predictability of fracture. At first, finer-grained material might seem automatically superior. It sounds like the perfect stone, smoother, more regular, and easier to shape precisely. But much of that fine-grained chert contained internal fractures created by geological processes. Those hidden weaknesses could ruin a large tool. Toolmakers sometimes selected tougher, medium-grained material for large Levallois products and robust blades, even though it demanded more effort to shape. For some smaller tools, other material could work well. Here is the twist. The best rock did not exist. There was only the best rock for a particular task. A material ideal for a delicate cutting edge might be poor for pounding. A rock perfect for a tool used immediately could be a bad choice for something carried over several days. Toolmakers had to balance sharpness, toughness, size, predictability, distance, and effort. That is not simple rock collecting. It is a form of practical materials science. And it helps explain why the first tools changed more than diet. A sharp flake could cut plant fibers, shape wood, process hides, and open access to animal tissue that teeth and fingernails could not handle efficiently. One carefully selected stone could help create tools made from other materials, wood, bone, or fiber, that usually disappeared from the archaeological record. In other words, the stone tools archaeologists find may represent only the durable skeleton of a much larger technology. But how did this knowledge pass from one generation to another? Archaeology cannot replay the lesson. There may not even have been a lesson in the modern sense. Young learners could watch skilled hands, imitate movements, collect materials, experiment with discarded pieces, and receive correction. A tool-making site covered in flakes was not just a workshop. It could also become a record of practice. Skill involved more than knowing which rock to pick. The toolmaker had to control the location, direction, and force of a strike. The platform angle mattered. The shape of the core mattered. The result of the previous strike changed the possibilities for the next one. Selecting material and shaping it formed one continuous decision-making process. This may be why raw material choice tells researchers something important about ancient cognition. A carried stone links several moments together. Remembering a distant source, recognizing quality, anticipating a task, accepting the cost of transport, and preserving enough material for later. None of this requires imagining an ancient genius thinking like a modern engineer. It only requires repeated observation, learning, memory, and planning. Abilities that became increasingly powerful in the human story. There was also room for compromise. If excellent stone lay far away, people did not necessarily walk there every time they needed an edge. They could use ordinary local material for quick tasks and save valuable stone for tools that demanded greater reliability. They could resharpen a used edge, remove another flake from an old core, or recycle a discarded piece. What looks like a broken rock to you might have looked like several future tools to them. That ancient decision has a modern mirror. You still judge materials constantly, even when factories hide the process. You expect a kitchen knife to hold an edge, a building column to carry weight, and a phone screen to resist scratches. Engineers test these properties with machines and numbers. Ancient toolmakers tested them through attention and accumulated experience. The difference is that a poor choice for you may mean replacing an object. A poor choice for them could mean reaching a task with a tool that failed when it mattered. So the next time you see a Stone Age flake inside a museum case, do not see a random sharp rock. See the invisible chain of decisions behind it, the remembered outcrop, the rejected cobbles, the long walk, the practice strike, and the future task already imagined. If the hidden intelligence inside ordinary prehistoric objects surprised you, tell me which clue changed how you see ancient humans. Subscribe for more stories revealing the overlooked decisions that built the human world. To you, the landscape is full of rocks. To an ancient toolmaker, it was full of possibilities.